our second minority mental health project, mayor candidate forum for Louisville, Kentucky. We are looking forward to this conversation. And Minority Mental Health Project, we exist to address the gaps in the community that are barriers to our community, specifically our Black community receiving therapeutic services. And that is accessibility, affordability, and you have the cultural responsibility piece. And so we are here as advocates. We are here to educate our community. We are here to uplift our community, and we are here to guide our community to these resources. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get right into the questions. Our dynamic moderator, Crystal Goodner, is going to be posing the questions to you, to the candidates this evening. And we are really looking forward to this dialogue and looking forward to hearing your mental health plan as we continue to shift our challenges in our community. So with no further ado, Crystal, it's all yours. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Damon Cobble, and good evening to everyone. And we thank you so much for lending your time for this very necessary conversation. We want to welcome you to part 2 of the Mayoral Candidate Forum on Mental Health, brought to you by the Minority Mental Health Project. We held our first forum back in the fall, and we're excited this evening to feature new voices and candidates to this conversation. But first, mayoral candidate Craig Greenberg was slated to join us this evening, but had to cancel due to a scheduling conflict. And it's no secret that he and his family and members of his campaign were met with a devastating encounter earlier this week. We're glad that he was left unscathed physically, and our thoughts and prayers are with him and his team and his family tonight. Our thoughts and prayers are also with this great city and everyone that is suffering. Let's get to it. A new study published on yesterday showed that people who have recovered from COVID-19 are significantly more likely to develop mental health disorders regardless of the severity of their COVID-19 diagnosis. The study, which was published by the BMJ Medical Journal, looked at millions of health records and found that COVID-19 patients were at an increased risk for concerns like anxiety, depression, substance abuse, and cognitive impairment. Now, this finding reveals that the topic of mental health, which in the past has been minimized, may soon become our nation's central focus. And this evening, that is in fact our central focus. Let's meet the candidates, and we're ready to get into this discussion. The way we're going to do the introductions, I'm going to allow each of the candidates do a brief introduction of themselves. And Mr. Damon Cobble, are we still instituting the Bell protocol?
Yes, ma'am. Out of respect for all the candidates, and we want to be respectful and give everybody an opportunity to respond. There's going to be a 3-minute time limit for your response. You will hear a light bell at the 2-minute mark indicating that you have 1 minute before you are respectfully muted.
All right.
So 3 minutes. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Cobble. Mr. Shattrell Hall, you're first. Won't you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Well, good evening. Thank you all for having me here this evening. I just want to say greetings to all the candidates as well. I am Minister Shattrell Hall, as the way you pronounce my name for those on here that may be wondering, Shattrell. I'm a minister at Quinn Chapel, 1901 West Muhammad Ali Street. And I always start with scripture. So Joshua 1:9 tells you to be courageous and strong. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord God will be with you wherever you go. And so I believe in answer to this calling of being mayor of this city is imperative at this time to be strong and courageous, to be able to speak the truth. Here from the city, from the West End, from the South End. I grew up here. I love this city dearly, and I'm willing to fight and go the distance. That's why my slogan is called to run, called to serve, willing to go the distance. My values are simple: faith, family, accountability, integrity, trust, and honor. So I'm here to stand up and to speak the truth and to fight for the city that I love dearly, that helped to shape, form, and create me as well. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Shattrell. Welcome. Ms. Shameka Parrish-Wright.
All right. Thank you. Good evening. I wasn't expecting to go so soon. last name Parrish-Wright sometimes means I'm at the last of the list. Thank you for having me back. I appreciate the work that you are doing and keeping the focus on mental minority health, and everything that you do is well appreciated. And definitely I want you all as a part at the decision-making table of my next administration. I'm here as someone who loves our city. I'm in love with Louisville, but I also understand a lot of the issues Louisville has because I've lived those issues with Louisvillians. And I currently want to make sure that our next generations, our seniors, understand that we are here for them, that we have a duty to serve our city. And we need new administration that is going to be inclusive, intergenerational, intercultural, that's going to make sure that we deal with all of our problems straight up, head first, not just having a press conference, not just having it in writing. I want to see application of everything that we talked about. And last, I see so many people run on one thing, but when they get in office, less than 20% of that is actually done. I am a woman of my word. I am a woman of Louisville who wants to make sure that I bring every need to the table at the executive level, and that I have all of you all engaged in the decision-making process moving forward. We are never going back, but we can go forward together. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Shameka. Mr. David Nicholson.
Well, good evening. And again, thank you and for the opportunity and to educate our entire community on this most important topic. And I would join, I'm sure, with the rest of the candidates here in saying that we certainly have kept and uplifted candidate Greenberg and his family and his staff this week as what they have had to encounter. I am David Nicholson, and I am a native Louisvillian and proud to be running for mayor because I do care very deeply about this community. I run on experience, deep experience for over 40 years in public service. And the office of the mayor is government to help and serve the people. I run on leadership with a proven track record as an elected official now for 16 years, that I have initiatives that have been accomplished from the driver's license branch in West Louisville to the nationally recognized Domestic Violence Center in the Hall of Justice, to passing legislation in Frankfurt. So the basic of what I've learned over my course of public service is simple, the 3 L's. You listen, you learn, and you lead. And that is certainly what I will do under my administration for every zip code, every individual that we call home. Louisville. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Nicholson. Welcome. Mr. Skylar Graudick. Did we lose it?
There we go. Sorry. Hi, my name is Skylar Graudick. I am a moderate Democrat running for mayor of Louisville. I'm a former police officer at the Louisville Metro Police Department and union lobbyist for the Kentucky State Fraternal Order of Police. As far as this conversation goes, I feel like I'm qualified to talk about mental health because as police officers, not only do we deal with a lot of mental health issues on the street, trying to connect victims of domestic violence or children who are having issues or people who have seen bad things with services. When it comes to a lot of the services that our city have, I actually, as a police officer, know what it's like trying to get those people those services and where those services are lacking. I'm pro-union. I believe that union membership and promoting unions at both the public and private levels are key to getting towards living wage, getting benefits packages that benefit our city. I believe that police officers, teachers, firefighters, all public service people, and private workers as well, nurses specifically, should have the right to express themselves when it comes to the difficulties of their job and being able to weigh in on public policy and criticize their establishment without the fear of getting fired. When it comes to mental health, suppressing the ability of people to talk about their experiences and then having to hear other people, mainly politicians who have agendas, bash them in the media or misrepresent their positions is extremely detrimental to to their mental health. I'm pro Second Amendment. I'm pro legalization of marijuana, full recreational legalization of marijuana. We know that marijuana is something that can help people with mental health issues. It's much better to use that than opioids, for example, when it comes to end of life care, or just a lot of friends that I have, they use it for their anxiety. It helps them much better than over-the-counter drugs. So I'm probably getting close to 3 minutes, but.
All right, thank you so much, Skylar, appreciate that. All right, and the 3-minute mark is when you're answering the questions, and so your intro doesn't have to be a full 3 minutes. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Phillip Molestina.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this forum once again. I think it's a great way for the city and everybody to learn more about the candidates and these issues that are so important. I've been very fortunate to come to the city over 40 years ago, and the last 20 years of my experience here has put me with this forum that we're talking about tonight in the front lines every week. I have dealt with people every week, whether they deal with suicide, abuse, depression, divorce. It's something constant that any pastor that I admire this city is dealing with every week, every day. And the tough thing is that you see those issues going on, but the help for those issues is not readily available. And that's the importance, I think, of this forum, and the importance of any candidate that's running for mayor, that these issues have to be at the forefront. So the experience that I have prior to being a pastor in business 20 years, I think gives me a well-rounded look at things. I think that we have wonderful candidates. They have all wonderful backgrounds. I think I bring something a little different to the table, because you see the human side that is so important, so crucial, so devastating when people have to deal with issues of life. But then at the same time, we just can't go out and do things without realizing there's a cost to them and how we pay for those things. So you have to have that balance with things. So I'm thankful for the opportunity that I have to serve this city. I love this city, and I'm glad to be part of this forum tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pastor Molestina. Welcome. Mr. William Bill Deeroff.
Thank you, Crystal. You can just call me Bill. That'd be great. My mother used to call me William when I was in trouble, so I'll go from that standpoint. I appreciate that. You brought up a point of what happened this week with one of our candidates, and we were fortunate that the person didn't get injured. And as we look forward, as a mayor, what I do, I have the experience of how we move this needle forward. And I have to ask you, as we move forward, the gun violence is not only the person that's shooting the gun that may have the problems that we need to resolve, it's the victims in this situation. So Mr. Greenberg and the people that were in his office and the family that he has, let's keep them in our prayers, because in the future, this is going to hit him. And I don't care what everybody says and how strong it's going to be, this is going to hit you. And that's what we're talking about tonight. And the problem is, we have to have somebody that has done this and has been moved this needle forward. And what we've done in J-Town, we are moving the needle. As of last 7 years ago, we started the Angel program when it was dealing with drug addiction. We have recently put in a victim's advocate that deals with those that are after the fact, as we were talking about with Greenberg. If he needs the victim advocate, we'd be happy to share that with him. And then we have the social worker. But what the key thing we found out is that the person has to feel safe to come to what we are doing. They have to feel safe to come into the building. They have to feel safe, the person that is doing what needs to be done to help them. That's the very first step we have to do. So whatever minority it is, the key thing is when they walk in that building, they have to realize the person in that building is there to help them and to reach out to them. And that person is a friend. So when we look to the future of what we're talking about tonight, we have to realize that we need a whole organization to do this. Was that a beep to kick me off?
No, it was not. That was not. No, it was not.
It's not. It'll be like, ding, you're good. Thank you so much.
Because Crystal, you said we had no time limit on this, so I could go to 7 o'clock. No, and I'll stop there. You know, as a mayor, I live this every day. And I'll just give you one. 2 hours ago, we had a situation with a young lady that had a mental breakdown right at an office and came in an office where we were at. And we have in J-Town, we have a system, what happens when that does happen. We have a social worker that comes, an ambulance that comes, and we assess the situation. And within 15 minutes, we had it assessed. We had a place for this person because they were homeless, and we had the ability to help them, to get them the help they needed because of the mental health they were having, the breakdown they were having. And we had a place for them to go that was warm and had food for them. That's what we have to set up in Louisville, and everybody has to have that across the county. Thank you all for having me tonight. I appreciate that so much.
Thank you so much, Bill. Welcome. Last but not least, Pastor Timothy Findley Jr.
Well, thank you all for having me. Thank you, Crystal, Ms. Joanne James, Damon Cobble. Again, this is a necessary conversation. I apologize, I'm breaking one of my rules, and I'm doing a Zoom from the car, but I'm in the parking lot while community members are throwing me a fundraiser right where I'm at. So I apologize for that. Let me also say thank you to my colleagues, those who are running for mayor involved in this race. It's good to see them. Certainly our thoughts and prayers are with Craig Greenberg, his family, their staff. That's something that I don't think is lost on any of us. I'm running for really, it's three foundational principles that I believe in. This isn't something that I came up with, you know, to run for mayor. This is just who I am. This is how I've done ministry. This is how I've led in the nonprofit world. It really is for me integrity, transparency, and tenacity. Operating with integrity, operating with transparency, and always being tenacious, always getting the job done, and making sure that you are effective in what you do. You know, we've prayed and we're continuing to pray for Mr. Greenberg, but we also have to pray for the family of Quintez. We have to pray for those who are also affected in this horrible tragedy. Pastor Phillip Molestina sort of alluded to this, that as a pastor, this is not anything new for me. This is something that I do and have done every single day for the last 14 years. And even before that, when I was a counselor for Brookline, when I was a counselor for Maryhurst, this is something that I've been championing for quite some time, talking about mental health and talking about the need for equity in mental health. Because the truth is, we all know what the issue is. We all know that we need better resources and we need more access to mental health. The problem is equity. And we need a mayor that is going to fight for those, fight for everyone, but really especially fight for those who are being left out of mental health treatment and not getting quality mental health treatment. Crystal, you started off by talking about the effects of COVID-19 and the fact that COVID-19 has ravaged so many communities. And now that there are, you know, there's traumas that people are living with. Well, if we don't do something about the system now, they're going to go right back to having no access. There's going to be brick walls. There's going to be mistrust. And the reason why I am the best candidate for mayor in Louisville, the city that I grew up in, the city that I've worked in, the city that I've fought and bled for, is because I understand and realize that change does not happen because you wish it. Change does not happen simply because you have a great campaign speech. Change happens when you have a fighter that goes out and demands and fights for change. And that's why I'm excited to be the next mayor of Louisville.
Thank you so much, Pastor Tim, and welcome. And I'm sorry, last but not least, Mr. Colin Hardin. Did I pronounce that right, Colin? Colin? You're on your mute.
Yes, Colin.
Colin, okay. Go ahead, Colin.
Thank you for hosting me tonight. My name is Colin Hardin, and I'm a server, bartender. I'm just a regular folk, just like y'all. And while I'm not the most religious person, I will quote the Bible. It says, "The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing." And see, that has always said to me that complacency is as bad as action. So when I look around and I see a world that disgusts me, I know it's my fault. I bear responsibility in it. And the truth is, we have to change the fundamentals. If you want change, you have to change fundamentals. So the mental health wave and the addiction wave and the violent crime rate, this is all stems from the exact same problem. And that is that it is miserable to live in this country if you are not filthy well, if you're not filthy rich. And that's what I'm gonna change. See, the two things that we do wrong is that we put profit above all else, and that undercuts things that money doesn't buy, like integrity and character and, you know, loyalty. And we have this mentality of, you know, I come before everything else. And that's lunacy. See, none of us are where we're at today because of the achievements of a single individual. It takes two people to have a kid, so we'll just start there. I understand that the collective will always come first. And we have a system that prioritizes hyper-individualism and, you know, to stamp down each other in pursuit of ever-growing profits. The mental health comes from people being depressed and angry, being fed the lie that a meritocracy was about working hard and you could make it. I've worked hard my whole life, and I have always put the collective before me, because at the end, I don't matter. The group does. And until we have leadership that reflects that, well, we're going to keep going straight down. I reflect that. As mayor of Louisville, I will always put Louisville first, period. I'm not going to try. I'm going to make your lives better. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Colin. All right. Thank you, everyone, again for joining us for this conversation. If you're just now tuning in, welcome to part 2 of the Mayoral Candidate Forum on Mental Health, brought to you by the Minority Mental Health Project. Let's go to a conversation and a topic that has been in the news here recently. The CDC reports that back in 2018, more than 48,000 Americans have died by suicide. Black suicide attempts have increased in Louisville. Youth suicide has increased in Louisville within the past 5 years, and 6 inmates have died within the past 3 months in Louisville jail. If elected, how will you make sure that residents of Louisville will have access to quality mental health care to prevent these tragedies? And what reform would you bring about for the prison population? We'll do this popcorn style. Whoever wants to jump in real quick and answer that question.
Okay, I'll start. I'll take, particularly in jail, you have to go through classification and those different things when you're being processed. We should add a mental health evaluation in that, not a deep psycho evaluation, but something simple, something that could tell if, you know, somebody, you know, playing with all their marbles or not. And then, you know, based on that classification, you know, we could then divert them to somewhere other than a steel box, because, you know, the suicide, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. I was asking the question. The suicide rate really comes from not being sad, but being like hopeless. And the hopelessness of the whole situation right now is what's leading, particularly Black people, to committing suicide. So I'll start with giving them hope.
All right. Thank you, Colin. Pastor Tim, I'm going to let you go ahead and jump in because I understand that you have to leave early. You have a fundraiser going on. So, Pastor Tim.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's an extremely important question, Crystal, especially again with where we are right now. To be completely honest, when you talk about, you know, I'll start with the jail system. The jail system in Louisville, and I've talked with former corrections officers, there's a lack of accountability and there's a lack of leadership. And much of what we're seeing in the jail system with overcrowding, we're putting people in a situation where, again, there's no leadership and there's no structure. But I really think we have to entertain and really think through this point. Why are we locking up so many people in Louisville with low-level offenses? Why do we have so many people with warrants out for their arrest for non-violent offenses? And why are we putting them in a situation where we know there's a lack of leadership there? So I want to start there. But as it relates to suicide, as it relates to the hopelessness, I think there was a recent study that came out that Kentucky was, I believe, voted to be the saddest state to live in. A lot of what we're seeing in Louisville, especially, it's really about root causes. It's about conditions that people are living in. Certainly, there are some pre-existing things that we need to talk about. And I think we'll get into that tonight. But I think in this moment, what I want to highlight is the fact that we seem to be surprised because people who are in very difficult, resource-starved living conditions are finding themselves hopeless and dealing with all kinds of different traumas. And I think that's where we have to start in this conversation, that if we're going to really properly address mental health, yes, there are specific things that we need to do. I've got a whole plan that's laid out on my website for that. But we cannot continue to ignore that a lot of the reasons why, as Colin just lifted up, a lot of the reasons why people are feeling hopeless is because we've allowed them to be in positions or put them in positions where they're starved of resources. They're not living in a situation where they're even being able to experience a quality life with quality wages, their neighborhoods, infrastructure, all of these different things. And I think we've got to start, and I know that that's not the traditional way to start and to answer that question, but I think it's so very important that so many people would find themselves helped. And this is not the end all be all, but so many people would find themselves in a different place if we would deal with the fact that we live in an inequitable city. We live in a city right now where people are purposely put in situations where they're not able to thrive. And then we start from there. The second thing that I'll say, especially as it relates to the community, is that we have to ensure that everyone in the community has access to a well-trained, certified mental health professional. And we have to tear down the barriers of trust, because many people, especially in marginalized communities, do not trust healthcare providers. They don't trust practitioners. They don't see practitioners or mental health folks that look like them. We've got to do a better job there. So I think I'm getting up on my 3 minutes, but.
Yes, you are. All right, Pastor, thank you so much for that.
I'd like to follow up.
Okay, Minister Chartrell, and then next. Go ahead.
My apologies for my wife and children are returning, and my dogs are greeting them. But yes, to follow up what Colin and Pastor Findley Jr. said, I most definitely agree. I believe that when it comes to the jail, after speaking with the former chief of police and chief officer in corrections, the issue of the lack of leadership and structure, right, of being able to not only have the right person selected, but also the consultation and advisory that comes from those who have been successful. We need those to be able to come back and to help, to aid and assist, and not just sit on the sideline and not be used, but we have to go to them and ask them for help so that it doesn't continue to be the same issue. I work with young men who are in jail right now and some in federal prison that call me on the regular as a minister and that text me and keep me abreast to what's going on in Louisville jail and how bad it is and how there's no help and no aid. And what am I supposed to do until I get moved? And so that is a huge issue that comes with choosing the right leadership that will choose the right team while also having consultation and advisory from those who have done it successfully in the past. As far as the suicide rate, well, it definitely deals to the Black neighborhood and community growing up in the West End and from the South End. I grew up in some of these same conditions, not a global pandemic, but just under the same conditions of commodity, WIC, welfare, food stamps, not having the aid and assistance, and the village and the neighborhood, we had to take care of one another. So I believe what has to take place right now is that, to Pastor Findley's point, we have to come to the people and meet them where they are with the experts. But I want to also create a partnership with the churches and with so many nonprofits that we have as well to get them the resources and funds that they need to be able to come to give the hope that Colin was talking about. It has to be strategy in order to get the people to move. You need the people that they can trust, which is one of my points of restoration to the city, of restoring trust, order, and belief. So we have to go to the people first, and it's going to take those that we're familiar with to get out and meet them where they are with the experts, as Tim put us in place. But it has to come from those places already doing it, which are the churches and the nonprofits that's doing the work, but they're not coming to us. We have to go to them. Thank you.
so much, Chartrell. Damon, you might have to turn up the volume on your bell. I can't really hear it very well. Thank you so much.
All right, will do.
Mrs. Wright, and then Bill, if you'd like to comment after her.
Thank you. Last time when we had this discussion, I talked about how important it is to be an impacted person, how important it is that I don't have to call the jail director. I don't have to call and have to speak with ex-officers. I work with those folks every day. And I've been doing this work for the past, since 2018, even more than that. Doing nonprofit work in almost every sector means that you're getting an impacted leader who's gonna come with solutions. So I'm a solutions-based person. When I heard your question, I wrote down notes about what we need and what I see we need. I have 3 young adults in their 20s, and some of the things they tell me is that they feel like they can't access Metro government services. Our Metro government needs a whole restructuring. If anybody thinks that they're gonna come in as mayor and change that, leaving things the same, they're sadly mistaken. And no disrespect to Mayor DeRuff, but he hasn't been mayor of Louisville. None of the candidates have been mayor of Louisville. Louisville, it's its own beast, it's its own thing. And so we have to have things that work for Louisville as a whole. So I will also employ our youth and make sure that they're a part of doing these check-ins with their peers, also making sure that this mental health affairs has a direct connection to what I've been saying from day one. We need more living rooms. The living room concept never got the full resources or the full funding, but police officers, housing advocates, so many people told me that it worked. I want to have monthly meetings with faith leaders, with teachers, with students, with young adults, with seniors that say what's working and what's not working. We need transparency. We need government accountability. We need 24-hour centers that turn into respite centers after dark. We need places where people can go. And I want to set up victim and survivor services that really work, that they can go to and access as soon as something happens. That is the thing. The response of Metro government is too slow and it's too convoluted with who do you go to, who do you talk to. I want to come in there, assess and do a real clean out, and also make sure the people who are there, I'm listening to them first. They get people in all the time and they're not heard. So making sure we have these centers around there, making sure we have more 24-hour services, making sure we're working directly with our faith community, with our police, with our service providers. And then the last thing is the mobile trauma response units.
Right, your time is up. I apologize for that. We're going to try to get as many candidates in and answering questions as possible. So we ask everyone, please keep it 3 minutes or less. Mayor DeRuff, you wanted to comment?
Sure. Let's just cut to the chase. The corrections needs new management, and the mayor should step up and put somebody in there that can control the situation and move the situation to where it needs to be in the future. We keep talking around it, but the management has been it hasn't kept up with the times. And as every one of these candidates keeps saying, we have things that need to be done, but in order to do it, you have to have the management down there to know how to do it, when to do it, and what to do. We have to stop arresting the people that don't need to go to jail. We have to, we're all probably one operation away from possibly being addicted on a drug, and we're not criminals just because we're on drugs. It means we need help. In J-Town, we have the Angel program where we have over 300 locations nationwide to give you help, not put you in jail. When it becomes a mental problem, the behavioral problem, we should be getting these people help they need prior to going to jail. Let's quit having them go to jail. Let's get them the help they need now. And that help is out there, and we should be able to provide it for them on day one. I'll stop there because that would be, I don't want to go too long because it's a short event you're having.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bill. Next question. Pastor Tim talked about access to healthcare. Access to mental health care. And it's hard to get mental health treatment if you can't make an appointment with a mental health professional. If elected, what will you do to increase the availability of mental health services in our community?
Oh, I mean, I wish I had a more profound answer to that question, but the answer is in your question, and that is make it available. And I know that people listening to this right now will say, well, Pastor Tim, that doesn't make sense when you say, how will you do that? A lot of what we have done in this city, and I know this even pointing to what Shameka has said, I started my church in 2008. I deal with the individuals that don't have access. I started my nonprofit in 2010. I deal with the individuals that do not have access but need the help. And you have all of these hotlines, you have all of these programs in place, and oftentimes they lead you in circles. So the way that we increase access is we take the services and we link them with familiar businesses, familiar houses of faith, and what people impact and what they come into contact with every single day. The truth is, every single church should have a direct line and have a direct sort of channel to get people that come through their doors and the community that's around them to the help they need. That's something that I've already done with Kingdom Fellowship, and I believe you start there. I believe that when it comes to direct services, that we ought to make it very, very clear on how to do this. Right now, the majority of people in Louisville, if you ask them, if someone's in crisis, what do you do? Who do you call? Most people won't know. And I believe that a part of that, the blame there is on this current city government and others who have not made that very plain and very visible. If we all know that mental health is a major issue in our community, then it ought to be very easy, very clear commercial, radio, and publications on when a person's in crisis, this is what you need. And we ought to work with providers. We ought to work with existing therapists that are doing amazing work in the community. Like, for instance, I have a person on my team, Alicia Durrett with Begin to Talk, LDC, or LLC, I'm sorry. She does phenomenal work, has worked with the city. And she's even talked about the challenge of getting through the red tape. I want to make sure that we're clearing all of that out and getting these services, getting the knowledge, and getting the information on how to get the services to the city. And you have to have a campaign, you have to have a media blitz where people understand this is the way you go. And I think that's a non-negotiable. It has to happen.
Thank you so much, Pastor Tim. Mr. Nicholson.
Yes, thank you. And I real quick want to go back and say, one, we're talking about, the first thing is the stigma of mental illness. That's what has to be addressed, that it is okay. And that we do need to talk out loud about it and understand it as a community as a whole. I'll go back very quickly though. When I look at a statistic that over 29 individuals, 25 and under, an 80% increase in 2021 committed suicide. We are not talking to our kids. We are not working with our children and listening to them to understand their anxieties, and to think that the youth and committing the suicides, that goes directly into the access. And I would say that to Reverend Findley, places where we know our citizens tend to feel comfortable and gather, and if that's places of worship, our community centers, that we must have those open and accessible without an appointment, but mental health and doctors there at least 1 to 2 days a week. That we must too realize that the mental health plays on the physical health, and we must look at the physical health. And as we look at the individuals that are incarcerated, the aftercare, we know that our jail is the largest detox center in the Commonwealth and housing the largest amount of mental health individuals. They have to have an aftercare, and we have to manage that aftercare. So I'll stop there so we can get to a couple other questions. But access has to be, but we must remember, we got to talk about it. We don't need to be ashamed and talk about it so everyone has an awareness. That's how you begin to bring about some access to treatment.
Mr. Graudick, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is where my experience as a police officer comes into play. People are really fond about talking about these services, these mystical, magical services. Well, I actually know what those services are, and unfortunately, they're quite lacking. I don't want to bash the people who give them, because we need them there and they do a good job at what they do, but it's almost non-existent. So when you have someone who's suicidal or going to harm others and their parents try to get them help, they can go through a process called the mental inquest warrant process, and it takes a long time to do. And so when the police show up, we get called to serve that warrant. And instead of taking them to the jail, we take them to U of L hospital. This is pretty much the only mechanism that exists for parents or when people are having issues like that. And a lot of times what will happen is we'll see that person back on the street before our shift is over. And then we'll have to go back to the parents and explain to them multiple times this process. And it happens so frequently sometimes you get to know these people and it's like, hey, Mrs. So-and-so, it's me again. We going to the hospital? Yep. Okay, let's get in the car. And it's just like a routine thing. There's actually, from my lobbying days, I have a friend who worked on something called Tim's Law, which that happened to that person so many times. They actually have to try to advance and make changes in state law, and they still didn't get to where they needed to be. So to Shameka's point about the living room, it takes a long time to arrest someone and process them, especially if you're coming from out in the county lines. It's really a waste of time to officers when it comes to certain offenses. So like I had someone passed out on someone's front lawn on South Dixie Highway. It's an area that has a lot of heroin abuse. And so taking that person to jail wouldn't really do anything for that person. Trying to get them into the mental inquest process would waste a lot of my time to do that personally. So we could take them to the living room, where it's literally called the living room because they just kind of hang out there and get better. I can't let that person wander the street. They've already demonstrated that they're going to get hurt most likely. I can't leave them on the person's front lawn. They're calling me to get them out of there. The Metro Council defunded that program. So let's be real about this. In America, we like to talk about a lot of things that we'd like to see, and then we don't want to fund them. I know.
Thank you so much. Your time, that is your time. Colin, I understand you want to go next. Go ahead.
So I'm gonna give real answers. I didn't I think everybody has answers. I don't think anybody just started on the spot. So I was thinking when you asked me what would we do with it, and we'll start off by creating an entire new branch of the city state, which is solely developed, aimed at mental health. And like I said, we put somebody in the classification part of the website, classification in the jail cell. And before they get to the point where they're put into a cell, they should be mentally evaluated. But even with all the restrictions and stuff that COVID has done and people losing their livelihood, I know I'm one of them. I made great money before the pandemic started. I also have ADHD. So a lot of these things I qualify for. And it's in a lot of different circumstances, I could be in that jail right now. And with, or homeless because, a myriad of different circumstances. So what we do is you have between the schools and guidance counselors, evaluate all the kids to see how they've been handled in the last 2 years. You have a part of the jail, since we have so many people going in and out, they're classifying them. And then once we have an idea of what we're working with and how many people have mental issues or how many people are just understandably upset and miserable with, maybe they lost their house, maybe they lost their job with the pandemic. Maybe, they work like me for slave labor, $2.13 an hour is what we make because of tip credits. All these things compounded, it causes some people to get into these mental health fits of psychosis and anger, and locking them up and throwing away the key is not the answer. Instead, what we need to do is we need to isolate these people that do have mental health issues. We need to get them to a facility that'll handle them.
Thank you so much, Colin. Everyone, Pastor Molestina, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that we talked about the increased availability. And I think the biggest thing that has to happen, obviously, is to see what we do have and that what we have is being utilized properly. Because sometimes it's easier just to go and say, let's increase availability, but is the availability we have in the right places? Is it being utilized the right way? One thing I found out years ago when our church was looking around to how to help people, we were fortunate enough to find a person that we knew that was actually a counselor. And in our church for several years, we were doing this mental health counseling. It was free. Unfortunately, the person couldn't keep doing it. And as we looked for people to do that, it was hard to find. But the city needs to look at the perspective of saying, do we have the availability? Is it in the right places? Do we need to go on a neighborhood by neighborhood approach so that, as many have talked this evening, that people can look around and they can find the help they need, as one candidate said a minute ago, and find it quickly, find it fast. Mental health is not something you can just put off to next month.
Thank you so much, Pastor Molestina. Let's move on. It seems as if the conversation of mental health and jail continues to surface to the top. So it kind of points to this next question. Millions of Americans end up in jail each year that are in fact suffering from mental illness. Jails aren't equipped to provide mental health care to help people recover. If elected, what will you do to help reduce the jailing of people with mental illness? And should police respond to mental health crisis within the Louisville community? Pastor Chartrell.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Crystal. So it's just three points I would like to make to that. There should be non-police urgent response systems. There should be mobile crisis units and no barrier respite centers. And so the first point with the non-police urgent response team, establish a non-police urgent response system to resolve calls and services for the behavioral health related and non-violent to express the goal of helping parties involved with both arrest and hospitalization. So we have to establish those that's able to go in, but also while still being safe when they do go. So we don't just want a social worker to go with someone that's qualified. We also need them to be safe as they go when they go. The mobile crisis unit, again, out of balance the spread for the few instances where involuntary hospitalization might be necessary, create a mobile crisis unit so individuals in crisis can be evaluated in the privacy of their home rather than being transported to the evaluator, often in handcuffs in the back of a police car. It's not healthy or conducive for anyone, even though we may say we're keeping them safe or protecting them. Do they need to be in that environment, that situation, based on reading the situation at hand? And the No Barrier Respite Center, we need to partner with, it needs to be staffed 24 hours a day, to Shameka's point, 7 days per week. So when police officers encounter a community member in distress, but not in need, hospital level care is there for the officer to be able to pass off. I can think of one example when I was at Goodwill at the youth, the RISE facilitator for the youth, the young adults from 16 to 24. There were a number of young men who were brought to our resources from Officer Jasmine Collins and a few others that had the opportunity to make sure that they went to jail based on them carrying firearms or having warrants. They were able to bring these young men over to the spot. They were able to go through our program at Goodwill. They were able to get to my class where in most cases I knew them from middle school. And it was one of those where the neighborhood was able to then get them on the right path.
All right, Minister Hall, your time is up. Ms. Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. People think I'm joking when I say this, but once I become mayor, I will hire all of these gentlemen to work on everything that they talk about. That is what's needed. A mayor appoints people to those positions to carry it out. We can no longer have an administration that just does not check in on the work and doesn't have follow-up. But the mobile trauma response units is something that when I stayed at Hemlock and Southern in Parkland, I've asked my councilwoman, now she's judge, Councilwoman Green, for not just for responding when things are wrong, that's one part of it, but they're there to talk to the young people about what happens when you decide to use a gun, conflict resolution, what happens when someone is stabbed. There's trauma surgeons there, because that's a lot of times people are acting out to protect themselves and not to harm someone, but making sure that these units are accessible, that there's more 24-hour options. As the officer can tell you, former officer can tell you, most of these things happen late night. We think that everything shuts down because we're done, but the life continues on. So having more options for people, using more local services, smaller services, definitely minority and Black owned, and also with our other natives who are international immigrant, translation services, hiring some of the youth to help with that, because some of our immigrants are going to court or going to jail simply because they cannot explain what happened and there's a translation issue. So there's a lot of direct service we can do. We need the right people there to make those decisions. And the Dove Project, I put it in the chat, Dove delegates to expand that to every division, work with Metro Safe to integrate the other option to call, 988, 911, so communities can make the choice if this should be a trauma response or not. And then making sure that we're working on the back end too. Once someone sees something happen, a traumatic event, the kids, the family, everybody's impacted by that. So Metro government should have services and supplies and resources set up for those folks. I'll stop there, but thank you all.
Right. Pastor Molestina, go ahead.
Well, like I said, the question you asked was, what will you do to help reduce people going with mental health issues to go into jail? And the primary issue that we have, whether it be Louisville or any place else, is the jails are not designed at this moment to handle people with mental health issues. So what we need to do is we need to redo. I mean, as mayor, you have to come in and redo and bring the jail system up to the level to support mental health people that are coming in. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to do something to help. As someone else mentioned a little while ago, all we're doing is going through the process. The systems that we have are designed just to kind of just say you have something here to help people out, but it's not really doing the job. So what needs to happen is a true reform has to come on the jail system, where people that come, unfortunately, into the system because of mental health issues, they've committed a crime or done something, now at least they're flagged, not just put them in there, and as we said this evening, forget about them, but seek real treatment. The jail system has to have real treatment. And I have to bring up this point in this issue here that we're talking about is that if you go look at what the people working in the jails make, if you look at the pay grades, if you look at what the counselors make, the people that we're asking to do a job that's so difficult, that demands so much for expertise, they're at the bottom of what the pay grade is, and we're asking them to do something above and beyond. So what are you attracting when you can't pay people that level amount there? The reformation has to come recognizing jail cannot be done the same way anymore. Mental health is a major issue in our city, in our country, and the jail system does not recognize it. As someone said earlier, another candidate, the leadership cannot just keep putting in band-aids on things. They have to find the right leaders, they have to find the right solutions, and they have to make tough decisions with what they have, because we're dealing with people's lives day in and day out.
All right, Mr. Graudick.
So I think one of the problems, as I alluded to earlier, about silencing the people who know the most, whether if we're talking about public education and we don't let teachers talk out, we're talking about police officers and we don't let police officers talk out that the threat of them getting fired. This idea of social workers responding with police or responding to scenes is something that's not been challenged, because the people who know what it's like to be on scenes aren't allowed to talk about it. As we've kind of alluded to already, mental health, suicide issues, drug abuse issues with domestic violence, these issues that all collaborate and come together for mental health issues that you might encounter someone on a scene, they don't just fit into separate boxes. You don't just get a call and get dispatched to a run and it's like, this person only has suicidal issues. This person only has drug issues. This person might have drug issues and they might also be trying to kill someone. I'm personally not willing to gamble people's lives as mayor, seeing if something works and letting someone show up to a scene and get hurt. On domestic violence scenes, especially, you might get there and the perpetrator might be gone, but they might come back. And I'm not willing to let untrained people risk their lives in that way. What I am in favor of, and I have on my website, is, for instance, as a cop, it was really frustrating when I had a CPS issue, I have to wait on hold for an hour to get a hold of CPS. Or I'd try to get someone some substance abuse information. There's no one to connect them to. So there's no reason these people have to go to the actual scenes. They could be at police stations. And once the scene is secure and the police part of the work has been done, we can connect them immediately to other people where it's a safe environment, where you're not tying up police and you're not leaving social workers with the potential of getting hurt. Let me say this, when it comes to getting therapists out there, I have a friend, I know someone who has 2 master's degrees, almost a third. She was working at 7 counties and she was making $20.42 an hour. Okay. So when we talk about getting people in the jails to do these things, we have to actually pay them. As Pastor Molestina said, you know, we don't just want to bash the workers or the admin at the jail. As a state lobbyist, I saw them defund the pensions. I saw them defund insurance. They make these jobs competitive basically with being an Amazon warehouse worker. So the reason you don't have people to take care of people, and the reason you don't have people watching for people who are committing suicide, is because there's simply, it's not a good job to have. It's not a benefit. It's not a job that has good benefits, and you're losing people to other work. So, you know, again, if the question is why in our country, the answer is usually money.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott. Someone else?
Can I get in, Crystal?
Yes, Pastor Tim. Yes, go ahead.
So I want to push back on what Mr. Graudick has said and Mr. Molestina has said. Mr. Graudick, I think the challenge is you're assuming that a person in a mental health crisis will get to the place where the mental health person is. We're seeing over and over and have video evidence that people with mental health issues, when they encounter a untrained police officer in these matters, they lose their life. So I'm going to push back on that completely and say,
I got to respond to that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just not true. That's not true on a statistical basis. Of course, there's situations where people lose their life, but I'm tired of this narrative that whenever police show up, people got killed. It is absolutely not true on a statistical basis. This is an issue when we say police need to deal with things. Police are very good at dealing with and responding to the crisis in the very narrow scope of the abilities that they've been trained to do. It's not a police officer's job to be a mental health therapist. It's not a police officer's job to even connect people with service, although I took that upon myself. It's a police officer's job to get to a scene when people have called 911 for help because they can't handle a situation themselves and make sure everyone in that situation is safe. And the vast, vast majority of the time, virtually every time, police officers go to scenes and make contact with victims and suspects or people who have mental health issues, and no one gets hurt, not the officers, not the other people involved. So I'm really tired of hearing that narrative.
So Crystal, did you stop my time? Because I want to pick back up. I wanted to make sure I was respectful to Mr. Graddick. So again, what I was saying, and I think this is important because we've seen the model work with mobile response units. There's a program called Cahoots. You should look that up and see it. It works. There are people, and we have evidence that the interaction between police officers and those who are in mental health crisis, oftentimes it does result in an unfortunate situation. That is an absolute fact.
Not true.
Very true, very true. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you this, that many people who are watching right now, myself included, we've seen this happen. As a faith leader and as one who has worked on several different police officer accountability review boards, police officers are not trained to deal with mental health crisis. Let me also say this to Mr. Molestina. I do not think that the answer is to simply update the jail system so that it can also house more people with mental health issues. That is not the way. We are locking up too many people, and we have to—
I was on mute.
Say it again? Oh.
I believe that's your time. Mr. Molestina, I'll let you respond back to Pastor Tim's comment to you. Go ahead.
I understand what Pastor Tim is saying. I understand that it's not a matter of locking them up. What I'm saying is when they come into the system, we are flagging people that have a need. If the jail is designed to handle those people, that's where the encounter has to happen. The system right now does not have that, and that's why the comment goes to that, saying that's not where it needs to be. But if the system has the people and the resource to do it, what better place to help them out? What better place to give them the care? What better place to help them not come back again the following week or later on, or whatever the case may be? So it's not the ideal situation. The ideal situation is that they wouldn't even be there. But the case of B is that the system itself has to, like I said, that's why there has to be a reform. There has to be a difference in what's happening right now. Again, look at the number of people in the city jail or in the prison system. How many people do they have per, as ratio to the population? It's a minimal amount of people. So that's why they can't take care of that. I'm advocating of saying we need to, in the system where they're going to, because unfortunately, as a result of mental health issues, they've committed a crime, then you have to deal with it in some action. So that's why you have to look at that.
Thank you so much, Pastor Molestina.
Let me go.
Yes, go ahead. Mayor, go ahead.
All right.
I don't even know what the question originally was, Crystal, but let me bring you back to what the intention.
I can read the question if you'd like. Would you like for me to?
Well, let me go here.
Okay.
It's going to take a mayor that's the leader to solve all the problems that everybody is talking about tonight, because it seems like everybody has a different way of getting to the end result. And the key thing we did when we did the HERT project, the Heroin Emergency Response Team, we started the ANGEL program, and we did it right away. And we had all the people around the table in order to come up with a solution. But we have to start at the top and replace the mayor with somebody that understands what being around the table means. It's not a table on two sides. It's a table of a circle where it's both those that have mental behavioral problems. It has the police there. It has the reverends there. It has the mayor there. It has everybody there to come up with a solution and move forward. We don't move forward until we start the process right now. And when we did the HURT project, we did it by doing don't tell me how you got to where you are, tell me how we're going to move to the future to make it better. So as the mayor of the future of Louisville, we will be leading to do something right away, not be talking about all the different solutions. We will putting them into action.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next question. And we're going to be talking about a terminology that we're hearing more and more about called racial trauma. In December 2020, the mayor declared racism, Mayor Greg Fisher declared racism as a public health crisis in Louisville. The terminology racial trauma began to surface following the protests of 2020. The term refers to the mental and emotional injury caused by encounters with racial bias and ethnic discrimination, racism, and hate crimes. Any individual that has experienced an emotionally painful, sudden, and uncontrollable racist encounter is at risk of suffering from race-based traumatic stress injury. In your opinion, in what ways does systematic racism contribute to mental illness and violence in Black and Brown communities? Mrs. Wright.
All right, thank you. I just did a longer video to answer this question, and it's on my YouTube. So if you Google me, you should find that. But because I love that we have these panels, it's just not enough time to deeply dive in it. I appreciate our city recognizing racial trauma as a real issue. Unfortunately, many of us live it and continue to live it, even as candidates. And so it is something that is very important. More cities are recognizing. It's just getting back to the roots. It's just like when people are scared of CRT. The truth is that too many people of color and Black people have been hurt by the system. This is why the police could never fix our mental health issues. The systems that are currently set up have baked in injustices. The court system, the criminal legal system could never fix our mental health issues, but the court does need mental health court. And as a person that is running for office, that's something that I would be advocating for. We need mental health court that also includes making sure you are intentionally engaging Black people as much as you do white. The people who come in and out of jail are young white women and young white men who are dealing with opioid use issues. Our people, if we have something in our past or something, we don't even qualify for the release programs or the other alternative programs. We are canceled out from the very beginning, and we have some of the same issues. Now, substance use, mental health issues permeates every neighborhood that we have, every community in Louisville. And so it is important that we keep that as a priority, and we have all of these folks who are impacted at the table. Our faith folks play a part in that, because a lot of times spiritual options are not as recommended by the court. And so everybody wants to lock them up and throw away the key, but that is not solving it. So we have to employ new ideas, new issues, and bring missing voices to the table. And that's what I plan to do. You want to know more? Go to ShamekaParrish-Wright.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Mr. Nicholson.
Let me add to that, and I'm glad that Shameka brought up, again, I talk about experience, and when I was executive director of the Criminal Justice Commission, we did bring, and we do have the mental health court. We have mental health diversion programs. We have a mental health in circuit court to look at treatment plans. I keep addressing the aftercare, that most important component. But when we talk about the question that you posed here, is the providers, we must ensure that they're trained and they really are looking at the historical perspective of the individuals that they're working with, and that they understand that culture. We have a network. We have Simmons College, University of Louisville, Bellarmine, Spalding. We have good educational institutions that we have to partner with. Again, let's sit here and listen and learn, and then have a mayor that's going to lead by being inclusive and taking advantage of the resources that we have in the community, but understanding that we got to understand the problem that we're trying to address. And we can do that, but it's listening to our citizens.
Colin, I think you wanted to weigh in.
Yeah, all right. So on that last question, I just wanted to say real quick, two things. Skylar, a cop's job is to serve and protect, not like infiltrate and stabilize. And second, well, I mean, why are police individual branch of emergency services? Why would we not wrap all those into one emergency service? So in a situation where we don't know it might get hairy, you send the social worker and the police officer. And or in a situation that everybody is, in consensus of is not going to be a violent situation and is more like, a depression situation or something, need to talk somebody off a ledge situation, a social worker would go. It doesn't have to be either or. All right, now onto this question. The thing, race is particularly funny to me because I am biracial. My mother was white, my father is black. So I don't see race the same way as other people. See, race matters as much as skin color. And I mean that, as much as eye color. Sorry. And if you think it doesn't, like, look at the whole Nazi things, what they want, blonde hair and blue eyes, because that's how insignificant skin color should be. But we continue to talk about it and take it and bolster it. Now, there's plenty of things that, happened in the past that need to be paid for and need to be attributed to. But from here going forward, race will not be a thing, period. It shouldn't be a thing. We take off race onto, the fact you have to disclose your race for things like mortgages and things that allow the racism because they know, it's hard to be racist when you're looking at a paper. So I propose taking off the race on every form. Everything that says what race you are, we get rid of that altogether. Because there's only one race. It's the human race. The rest are in ethnicities.
All right. Thank you so much, Colin. Anyone else want to tackle the question about racial trauma? Okay, moving on. All right, we cannot talk about mental health without talking about addiction. According to Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, 1 in 12 Americans have a substance abuse use disorder. While we have safe and effective treatment, we do not have necessary access and support for treatment facilities or providers. How do you plan to answer substance use disorders and the opioid epidemic in our community? Mayor Bill?
I can answer this because it's not what I'm going to do. It's what I did 7 years ago when the pandemic of the drug addiction was out there. When Louisville keeps studying, we moved forward. We started HERT, the Heroin Emergency Response Team, as I said before, and we put everybody around the table, whether it is the people that needed help, whether it's the young people or different ethnicities, whether it's the police, the healing place, POA. And when we came to a solution, we moved forward with giving our police, our public works, our fire department, everybody with us a Narcan in order to help the person when the emergency need was there. And I mean, our public works were there because many times they're out on the street. But we also started the Angel program. And the one thing that's been brought up tonight many times is we don't have the ability to help and where the people need to go to help. We have over 300 locations that we can send somebody for help for drug addiction. The Angel program, even though it's in Jeffersontown, anybody in the whole county can walk in and we find them help. We find them help either part-time, full-time, and we have it whether it's free or it's scholarship or the insurance covers it. We do an assessment. In fact, not 2 days ago, a mother of our first victim that was being healed, the first one, was it came up to me and said, I just want to let you know, my daughter has been 7 years sober. She's fallen one time, but it's due to the Angel program that you had in J-Town. We keep up with the people. As was mentioned before, our jail is a 2-week detox center. The Angel program stays with you for months and years to make sure anytime you fall that you keep on going. We entered and had an agreement with the National Association, and we have a person on staff that does this and works with them in order to move the system forward. That would be brought downtown. That Angel program with my chief, who will be coming with me downtown, as he has taken it on a statewide basis when he was KSB commissioner, and he took it to all the places. We have put it in 6 other cities around the state. And to the question that, well, it's little J-Town. J-Town's the 6th largest city during the daytime. We have problems like anybody else. And a person that's addicted is addicted no matter where they live in this county and they need help. Our Angel program, by the way, anybody that's on this call, if they know somebody that needs help, our Angel program is up to helping you, whether we take you over to 7 counties or VOA or any place else in the United States that we have. We will take care of you and help you right now, not wait till 10 months from now.
All right, Bill, thank you so much. And all the candidates, if you could please, any information of platforms or websites, feel free to put that in the comment section so our viewers can access that information. Skylar?
Thanks. So I became a cop to help people, as did many of the officers that I work with. Helping people was what we wanted to do. One of the things that was really a hard lesson to learn as a cop was that many of the people that you wanted to help didn't want your help. And a lot of the people who finally did want to seek help couldn't get it. So for instance, where I work, South Dixie, meth, but also opioid and heroin use, it's ground zero for that in this city. And so I would do I would do CPR on people. I would do Narcan on people. Some people made it, some didn't. So the people who made it, they would have a needle in their arm, and EMS would be trying to ask them, what did you take? So they can get them treatment, and they would deny that they ever did anything. Then you would meet people who you probably revived a couple times and seen around a number of times, finally come up to you and say, I need to get help. What can I do? And a great place for that is the healing place that we have in this city. It's a very strict program, but there's not enough beds for everyone who wants to go there. If you need to go to retreat, say out of state, insurance might cover that for a day. So you're one of the worst things about drug addiction is it's environmental. So you can't expect people to get better or change their habits or get into a better mental space if they're in the same environment that is contributing to that. So once again, it's a matter of paying for things. And one of the clear things that we can pay for here is to give the healing place more resources. Pretty much everyone I know on the street who got better has gone through that program.
Thank you so much, Skylar. Mrs. Wright, go ahead.
Thank you. I think I like what everyone has said. I don't like jail being a detox facility. No jail should ever proud themselves on being that. They're not there for that. It's to hold people while they're pre-trial or waiting for the next stage of their criminal legal process. So, but I would love to see the Angel program in many places. I would love to see it fully funded and supported. And I would also want to make sure that we never catch everyone that is dealing with drugs and substance use. We will never catch everyone because a great deal of us function in the process of our substance use. The people that we catch have lost hope, have been given up on, have burned all the bridges. And so we always got to have harm reduction because there will always be people who use that as a coping mechanism. The substance use is directly related to our mental health issues. When they started closing more and more mental health facilities and gutting good social service programs, that's when you see these problems exasperated. So as a mayor, we have to make sure when we restructure our metro government that it is ready to deal with what it can. And then what we can't, we partnership. No one mayor can do that. All of us candidates can have all the experience in the world, but we're not going to run each one of those departments. We're going to have to appoint people there. This whole nepotism that has run our city is going to solve it. So I want to start over. I want the cleanest slate, and I want to get people like you all at the table helping us make those decisions and connecting the smaller mental health facilities as well as substance use facilities. Healing Place is great, but Healing Place does not even give its numbers because those people are also houseless. We got to have more regulation around how these people are doing it because those kind of places are not ending it necessarily. It's the willpower and people who are directly impacted, who have experienced drugs, who are helping people get clean too. They need to be hired and pay benefits to make sure that they can keep doing their work.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Minister Hall wanted to weigh in. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. To all the points that have been made, again, to Shameka's point, at the end of the day, we're going to have to work together. It's a team. Louisville's a basketball town. We have to learn to work together. But to this question, this topic, how do you plan to answer substance use disorders and opioid epidemic in our community? I just want to highlight some points that I'll be updating to my website as well as the rest of my plans. I'll be sending the Courier Journal. Just to highlight the points of creating community coalitions to work together across the sectors, developing ordinances and places for safe drug disposal, establishing drug diversion and task forces, using drug courts to fight opioid addiction and trafficking, creating referral programs through law enforcement agencies, disseminating information about state laws that encourage intervention, We want to do these things to build the awareness about the state's prescription drug monitoring program, which is PDMP. These efforts are critical to cutting down on the doctor shopping and preventing opioid overdose, but they are understand for various reasons. The cities and counties are involving local doctors and pharmacies to build awareness of PDMPs and remove barriers to implementing them fully. So it's going to take a number of things across the board of leadership of the executive office, but we have to make sure, again, that we're willing to do these things, as Shameka said, that these things will get done when the time comes, because the issues and problems are now real time. So those are some points I have on my website that'll be updated here tomorrow and sent to the Courier Journal as well. Thank you.
Bill, go ahead.
Let me mention two things about the Angel program. One, it doesn't cost the city anything. And we have gone out and got grants, and there's more grants that Louisville isn't getting to do social work, to get social workers, and to get the people in the Angel program. It's not costing us other thing. And then to Skylar's point, the Angel program, when somebody is addicted, it's similar to somebody that has a behavioral problem. There's over 200 behavioral problems. The same way with addiction. All people aren't the same. That's why when they come to us, we triage and see what they need. Some of them need to go home and stay here because they have kids, and that's the best way to do it. And some need to go out of state to get out of the area. So each one is uniquely different. But the key thing is, that program is not costing the city of J-Town anything, because there's grants out there, and there's volunteers, and there's donations. So we can move forward with this in Louisville very easily, because we've already worked on this on a global scale. In fact, one of my majors is now in charge of the national part of it.
Thank you so much for that. Listen, we are almost out of time. We've definitely enjoyed this conversation. Again, candidates, don't forget to drop your information in the comments section, websites, contact information, so our viewers can be in contact with you. I want to make this this will be the last question, and I want to give each candidate an opportunity to respond. And then at the end, we're going to allow each person to have a closing thought. You might be familiar with this story. In 2017, Michigan-based web developer Madeline Parker, who suffers from depression and anxiety, sent an email to her team saying that she'd be off for 2 days to focus on her mental health. Her boss responded back, praising her candor by saying, "I want to personally thank you for sending emails like this. Every time you do, I use it as a reminder of the importance of using sick days for mental health. I can't believe this is not a standard practice at all organizations. You are an example to us all and help cut through the stigma so we can all bring our whole selves to work." This tweet seemed to resonate with the world as it went viral, being retweeted nearly 15,000 times. As the city's leader, essentially the CEO of Louisville, how would you encourage business owners and organizations to take a more vested interest in their employees' mental health by offering or encouraging employees to utilize mental health days? Mayor, I'll go right back to you, Bill. Go ahead. Okay, well, each person is going to get an opportunity to answer that question. Go ahead.
I appreciate it. The one thing many people may not know, but because of my career, we keep up with Frankfurt. We work with Frankfurt all the time. There is a House Bill 44 that allows the kids in school to take a mental health day. So it's already happening. In J-Town, we believe in leading by example. And I realized through the pandemic, the pressures that many of my employees have gone through, and especially our police officers through all the different times. And I had them come in and we did roundtable discussions on how is your job affecting you and how can we do it better. And we assigned internal people that are skilled, people to help the people that are having breakdowns, and they were allowed to go outside. If they felt shy about or a skeptic about using somebody that's internal, they had the ability through the city to go external to find that person when they need it. So we realized what it takes to bring the mental health, to have a healthy, friendly worker, because when you come to work for me, it's a family, and family take care of family. So that's what we did during the pandemic, and that's what we'll continue to do in the future.
All right, I'm just going to go right across. Skylar, I'll let you jump in next.
So I also have experience lobbying in Frankfurt under the Bevin administration, which is probably one of the worst administrations in recent Kentucky history for the rights of workers, especially injury benefits, union organizing, all sorts of things were stripped from the average Kentuckian by that administration. So my solution, it applies to a lot of things. I'm going to be a mayor that is pro-union and pro-union organizing at both the private and public level. I have friends who are nurses who are forced to go to work sick, who don't have any PPE, who aren't allowed to talk about it, who aren't allowed to take sick days or mental health days. So the solution is that there are a lot of good businesses out there, like you've described, that will allow people to take mental health days and take care of their workers, but especially the larger corporations, the larger out-of-state corporations, they're going to have to be made to do that. The workers are going to have to get together and form a union and lobby for better wages, better benefits, and better working conditions. And that is, in my opinion, a tried and true American way of doing things. I don't want to mandate anything necessarily on businesses. I think that goes against the American way, but unions have long been a way, an accepted way for workers to get the things that they need. And as mayor, I will 100% back that. I think we've just seen all over the news that the greedy corporations, the really, really big ones, and again, that's not all of them, but the ones that employ a lot of people are going to try to get as much work out of their workers as possible and give them the least amount of money and the least amount of benefits.
Right. Mrs. Wright.
Never know when you're going to call me. I am excited because I am a worker. I've worked at Swift. I've been a union dues paying member for Locals 227. So I'm always about the workers. I already advocate for workers who work for Metro government, who work for the school board. I've went to teachers and met with our past 3 superintendents to help them get placement. For me, work is not going to be the same going forward. COVID has shown us that. So it's shown us also that we can get a lot done without coming into the office. So I'm about making sure that I start with Louisville Metro government employees first. There's over 6,000 of them who we want them to employ the best services, so we have to take care of them. So we have to start with livable wages. I nobody mentioned it yet, but if I'm paid well, I feel better and I know what I'm going to do going on. But employee assistance programs mean that I have access to health care. I have access to mental health care. I don't have to send an email out to the whole team to say I'm taking a mental health day. With my current employment, I get over 5 weeks of paid time off. I don't have to report. I don't have to show any proof. I want to take away a lot of the red tape that people have to go to take care of themselves. As somebody that is also a workaholic, I like that I get pushback to say, hey, you haven't taken time off. And that's what I do to my teams to make sure that they're taking time off. So making sure we take care of our Louisville Metro employees, make sure there's employee assistance program, make sure we have Zen rooms, a place to take a nap. They're dealing with all the stress of our city. They should be able to go take a nap and come back and restart.
Thank you, Mrs. Wright. I like the Zen room comments. Pastor Molestina.
Well, our city does a great job of attracting, for example, business from out of state and giving incentives. And at the same way as we're talking about this topic so much this evening, our city needs to have the resources to go and present to employers, to employers and say, here's a team of people the city has to go to your organization to talk about mental health issues, to talk about things that can happen, to educate the population there in the different places. And that way, as employers get to know more about these issues and understand the fact that whether you give them a mental health day or not, they're going to have more productive employees. They're going to have employees that are safe. Then employers will realize the importance of doing those type of things. I've worked in organizations that had resources, and whether it be the hospital, for example, that took them to our organizations, they learned about those things. The employees learned about whether it be blood pressure or whatever other things that are basic. And that education helped those organizations out. And so I believe the city can produce that, have that outcome of having this information available through a team of different people. And that way organizations can learn more about this topic that we're talking so much tonight about.
Right. Thank you so much, Pastor. Colin, you're up next.
Could you tell me the question one more time? Just because there's not a lot of people talking. I've been thinking about their answers. I can't hear you.
Basically, as the CEO of Louisville, what policies would you put into place to make sure that employees have access to mental health days so they can bring their whole self to work?
So the problem that we're all facing And it's a problem that people keep alluding to is the pay. Well, first of all, you shouldn't have to be paid to help people. So anybody in my administration will understand that. But second of all, like, all wages have been stagnant because minimum wage is stagnant. And there is no incentive to pay people more. And it doesn't hold just some wages, it's all wages. So it's like nurses, businesses, people, they don't have any more than minimum wage is allowed them to. So for example, what I'm saying is, like, if you make $15,000 a year minimum wage and you make 3 times that 20 years ago, that was a good pay. Now it's not. So I'll start by bolstering the pay dramatically of everybody that works for Louisville City, period. It's every single person. And then as far as legally is concerned, I would do everything I can legally to hold any corporation liable that would, fire its employee for a mental health reason on any avenue. The problem is that with particularly businesses, corporations, almost all of them are ruthless. The only thing they care about is profit. So when the profit, sometimes at the end of the day, they're going to have to drop profits. They're going to have to drop their profit gain for the sake of the community. I mean, that's just what's got to happen. Like, we can't worry about people's mental health when, they don't have any home to go to because they don't get paid enough money to even, and then like they don't even have health insurance. So it's like, you can't get sick. Don't hurt yourself. Don't take any risks. I mean, go to college. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much, Colin. That's your time. Mr. Nicholson.
Thank you. Yes. As we look 2 years now with COVID, the impact that it has had on everyone's mental health, I would first start with, I think our employers, that they realize the value of their employees that carried through during this last 2 years and what we encountered as a result of COVID and our other issues across this country, and in particularly here in our community. But then you lead by example, as you said, the CEO of Louisville, our Metro employees get sick days. I think it's 12 a year. We need to ensure that they know, without having to say it's a mental health day, but that we are including mental health days, not only for the employee, but for their families, dealing with, anxiety, depression, that we recognize that. We look at our Metro Employee Assistant Program to provide more information, more both on-site and off-site workshops to, again, discuss stress, anxiety, depression, other mental health issues that indirectly affect them, that they didn't realize that trauma is affecting their job and their job performance. So again, it's awareness, and we have to address our health insurance. Health insurance has not, the mental health portion has not changed. You see every year when you get new health insurance, there's different twists and turns on the health side, but the mental health side is virtually non-existent.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nicholson. And Minister Hall, I'll give you the last word.
Yes, so we have to put mental health at the forefront. It's undeniable what the issue is, to the point that everyone's made. If I'm not good in a good place, how can I effectively do my job? But how can I effectively help my family? How can I effectively be a good person, a good citizen? We have to put it at the forefront. According to the 2019 report from the United Health Foundation, the study showed the average adult in Kentucky has 5 mental health days per year, just 5 out of 365 days, not including holidays. So to Shameka's point of that, we have to understand that we need a break. You need time to collect yourself. You want the best product to be able to put out, you have to make sure that I'm good. And when I come to work, that includes all of me as a person. I don't bring my personal problems to work, but it does affect me if there's an issue with my wife, or if it, in case of Shameka, my husband, if it's my children, it is important that we understand that that is a factor. And what we need to understand is that it has to be spoken to the business owners, to the ones doing the employment, that they have an understanding of the importance that there needs to be not just going to business conferences to do more work, but there needs to be partnerships across the board with better mental health conferences, with different events that we have that take place that are people already doing these things, but we need to make it aware from the top down that it's okay for you to go, to remove this stigma that we have and this negative mindset when it comes to mental health, because we're all struggling at this time. So I will work diligently with the community to partner to make sure that this gets done with the community, with the people who live here, to ensure that this gets done across the board. I think I can move in between all different communities and channels, given my backstory and my upbringing. And that's one thing that makes me unique as your next mayor of Louisville. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Minister Hall. To all of our mayoral candidates, we thank you so much for taking the time to engage in this dialogue with us. I encourage each of you to visit the chat section. A lot of insightful information has been posted there, as well as contact information for the candidates. It's been an absolute honor to serve as your moderator for this discussion. I'm tossing it back over to you, Damon.
Crystal, thank you as always for a great session. We really appreciate you, community, for joining us for this very important conversation. Thank you to all the candidates for your time to help us understand what your mental health agenda is and what your mental health plan is for the city of Louisville. And also, I want to give a special thanks to Joanne James, who has worked diligently behind the scenes to make this happen. And she's also working diligently to make our next event happen, which is next month. And so we want to share with you all next month, we will be hosting a panel with some great pastors to speak on the church and mental health. And we have Pastor Bruce Williams from Bates. We have Dr. Kevin Cosby from St. Stephen. We have Bernard Creighton from Little Flock, Pastor Creighton, who's also a board member. And then we have Pastor Cassandra Gray. And so we're really looking forward to that topic, the conversation of church and mental health. We invite you all to join us, follow us on Facebook, look for the information that come out on social media, register in advance. It's going to be a great conversation. Sister James, I want to give you a word if you won't mind.
Again, what a great discussion. To Crystal, Damon, and all the candidates. God bless you all, and please continue to take care of your mental health. Self-care matters.
And on that note, thank you, Sister James, all the candidates. Good luck. We look forward to whoever the winner is. We look forward to furthering this conversation with you and meeting with you to help you move forward your mental health agenda, especially for our Black community. So everyone, good night. We love you all and be safe.
Thank you.